So I try in every drawing class to do at least one drawing that I've never done before, just for the experiment of it, or one that I don't even remember doing many years ago. So let's do one. How many of you know Saint Columcille? He was an early saint, and he lived in Ireland, and it was his passion to write out, copy, long before Gutenberg, copy the oldest texts of the Bible. And there was a wealthy man, I don't remember who it was, in a city in Ireland. He had kind of a monastery kind of situation, and St. Columcille knew that these sacred texts were in this man's library. And he went to visit him under the guise of just coming in to say hi. But what he was really after was to copy these books, because it was Columcille's intention that everyone, peasants, farmers, everyone had access to this work. And so he asked the man, can I copy this? And the man said no. He refused outright. Absolutely not. I have the only copy in my library. Thank you very much. So Columcille thought, well, I've got to copy these books. How can I do this? And so in the night, he stole into the man's library with his satchel, with his mutton fat candle and his pencils or pens or whatever he had, his quills, and he spent night after night in the library copying these texts. And he was found out and exiled to one of the Ionian Islands, I believe, and was made to live there for the rest of his life. So, oh well, he tried. So I used this story to introduce cursive writing, because there was this whole sacredness around how important it is to, as reverently as possible, write down, copy these works, these most important works that had been written before. And so I might, during this time, maybe after I've introduced the story, and now the children are practicing cursive writing for the first time, have this on the board, let's say come Monday morning or something like that. So let's start with the table. Now, you're not going to teach perspective drawing to your class until 7th grade, but that doesn't mean you can't put a drawing on the board earlier, not a super in-their-face crazy Renaissance perspective, but just enough to give them a sense of what a tabletop would look like as a work surface. So let's start with a lightish brown. And again, let's create this space. This time, let's make it a little bit more rectangular, but soft corners. And while you're doing that, I did keep in mind, as I put drawings on the board all through the grades, that in the younger grades, they tended to stay horizontal. And as the children woke up, gradually, I tended to, but not always, I tended to go more vertical with my drawings, which also gave me more chalkboard space for other things. So some brown, let's go back over that. We're going to make this a dark border. So we can put some purple over the top, and again, the purple doesn't have to go everywhere. It can be really strong in some places and soft in others. Okay, so picture this. We're going to have a tabletop, a desktop, and it's going to take up a fair amount of the space. So, and we may not even see its edges. So we're not even going to see, so there's the back edge of the table, and then the whole rest of this is going to be tabletop. We won't even see the front edge. How's that? And let's warm it up with another color, maybe an orange, light or dark orange. And behind the table, so you can imagine column seal is going to be sitting facing your drawing, and on the far wall we're going to give him a window, and through that he's going to be able to see whether or not the sun is ready to come up, and if it is, he's got to get cleaned up and out of there. So just lightly sketch in some kind of a window grid. I'm not sure what kind of windows they had back in this day. In fact, if they even had windows, it might have just been an open arch or something. And so just kind of lightly sketch that in. Okay, so we're going to put a few things on the table. So take a light color, a yellow, a gold, and right in front, we're going to put in a piece of paper. So this is where we're going to use a little bit of perspective. It's going to be smaller at the back side and getting wider as it gets closer to the viewer. Okay. And for now, it can just be yellow or a gold or some light color, so you can differentiate it from the table. And off to one side is going to be his candle. So again, using your yellow or gold, create a little candle holder. And a candle, and it'd be kind of short and stumpy. It's not going to be some beautiful taper that we have today. This is mutton fat after all. And a flame. And if my things seem off kilter, it's only because I'm not looking straight on at my work as I'm drawing. I'm working off to the side, so I'm not doing it on purpose. Okay, and then off to the other side. And I really milked this with my second grade. I talked about how important it was that he always put all of his tools back in his bag. So there it is. on the desk, open, ready to receive everything back into it. And we'll probably eventually make it like a nice maroon velvet or something, but right now it's just going to be yellow. We're just sketching in things. And then the all-important book is going to be in front of him. So open, we'll have the back binding of the book, and then we'll have all of these pages, and eventually going back to the page he's working on, maybe seeing some of the other edges of the pages. Okay, so there's a book. Okay, so I've kind of found everything. Now I can look at it and say, all right, well, what looks odd? Well, to me it looks odd that there's so much more table past the book. So I can take my eraser, except I don't know where it went.
Jared's got 12.
And thank you so much. And I'm going to come in and modify, which is perfectly within the realm. I'm going to have the book be pretty close to the far edge of the table. So you can come back in and erase, or you can use your hand and erase. And okay, how's that feel? Does that feel better? That feels better. So he's working by candlelight. And with this drawing, I really wanted to just set this mood of what it's like to be up all night. As tired as he was, he wanted to sleep, but he had this task, his goal. He had to stay awake. He had to do this. He was so compelled. So what I wanted to create with this image was this light cast by the candle is his only illumination. So we're going to gradually turn this into a very closed, small lit space. And in the window, though, we're going to start to see the first colors of the light of day. Okay, so the dogs are probably starting to bark. They're alerting the owner of the book that somebody's doing something they shouldn't be doing. So we're going to just kind of create that whole picture, right? So here we go. So the walls behind him, so all of this, use some of your darkest colors. Come in with purple, dark blue, red, violet, just your darkest colors. And you're going to go around the window and along that back edge of the table and start building up some darkness. And the wonderful thing about chalk is if you don't like something, you just go over it. Almost everything can obliterate whatever's underneath it. So like, I don't need the grid in here, so I can either take my hand, make it go away, or I could just pass more color over it. I'll save that grid of the window panes for later. All right, so there's one color going over with another color, and I hope some of you got some of those really dark colors, the slenderer chalks. Oh, while I'm at it, let's put a little bit more of one color in our outer frame. Make it a little bit more beautiful. And let's get some early daylight. So maybe a soft blue. And see what happens if we pass over it with a darker blue. So we want it to still be pretty pre-dawn, not a lot of color. And as we get closer to the horizon, maybe add in a little bit of orange or rose. Just a little bit of it starting to peek into the sky. And some ground. Okay, maybe some trees in the distance. Again, barely, they're just going to be silhouetted. They won't be really colorful. Maybe some dark greens, browns. Almost black, and we will bring some black into this at the end. Okay, use a brown now, and we're going to start bringing in some details. So frame out the window a little bit, not too crazy. Add that same brown to your back wall. Okay, and we've spent enough time back there. Let's move back to the foreground and start giving some color to our sack, maybe the binding of the book. Base of the candle holder. Now I'm going to start bringing in some whites. White to the page. White to the book. White to the candle. Flame. And we can make our pouch nice, a different color, a red violet, some nice little satiny ties on there. Maybe showing a quill pen. So with this drawing, we really have to consider the light source. So look at your drawing, look at where things are placed, and decide, all right, this candle, what's going to be receiving the greatest highlights? So if your light source is here, this fold, and the book pages are going to be the most illuminated. The paper, parts of the pouch that are facing that candlelight, which then also means that areas behind, and I would use a really dark purple for now to come in and put some shadow. Shadow under the very edge of the book. Shadow in between some of the pages. Shadow under the candle. And now, if I want, I can leave it at that, but I could also go further. Say, okay, I really want to narrow in on all of this effort that's happening right here. So this is where I might use black. And what I'm wanting to do then is kind of darken all of this space out here. And I'm not going to go really heavy into it, but I'm going to come in and just bring in a little hint, and again, I have to step back. I'm just way too close to see whether this has an effect. It has some. So coming in behind the table, this is going to be much darker. A little bit of a shadow on those sides of the window. And you might even want to come in and just put a little hint of text without getting carried away. Just a gesture. So there might be a kind of a little illuminated manuscript kind of a box in the corner, and then just the gesture of text. Some little image in here. Don't know what it is. And now I'm going to go back in and kind of frame out my window. So these chalks, the wider round ones, they don't have some of the darkness that the mercurius chalks have. The brown, this brown, which is the darker of the two, is still not very dark. Yeah. And Brett, I don't know, it seems like that you have a different brown there.
Yeah, this one of these.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So it makes a big difference when you want to bring in some really rich colors. It's hard to get them. Whoa, everybody goes. It's hard to get them with these round chalks, the bigger round chalks.
Do you have a favorite brand of chalk that you use?
Mercurius. The mercurius chalks. Yeah. Okay, so you've created a mood, you've created the sense of reverence for this work that's about to be done, and there you go. So take a minute, look around the room, see what others have done. There's some really lovely window shapes, diagonal panes. So you can take that, arched windows, and explore where you want to go with that. Okay? And while you're finishing that up, I'm going to just put a really quick little drawing on the board for when, let's say you've got a drawing on the board and you really don't want to get rid of it, but you want there to be something new, but you're not ready to commit to a whole new drawing. One thing that I did regularly on the chalkboard was I had different sections of the board that were committed to different things. One was the date, or a frame around the different classes of the day. So let's say that you're going to frame in the date. So up here you've got September 23rd, 2010, and maybe underneath it you have the children write in the day. So that alone can turn into just a lovely little chalkboard drawing. And I don't mean a drawing, but some color. And this might be up in the corner of your chalkboard. And so again, just creating some kind of a lovely colored frame around it. And depending on how often you want to do this, you could actually do the colored frame and then write over it. I tended to just go around its edges. So and again, this is something you can do in a couple minutes. and it can offer something that's pleasing to look at onto the board when you're not ready for a whole new drawing. And doesn't have to be crazy. Find some areas where you've got some light passing through. Yeah, that's simple. How long did that take? A minute. Okay? How are we doing? Should we try and do one more? Okay. I hope to bring a couple more. I can show you some. I have a few drawings in here that I can show you. But let's switch course here and look at a drawing that would be a main lesson book page that you're initially going to put on the board. So let's go into 5th grade Ancient Civilizations. And I love maps, and I love to take where we are and play with the quality, well, the mood of the colors from a given place. And India to me seemed very much like candy, as opposed to Persia, which seemed very earthy, and opposed to the Nile, which had a different quality. So every week as I brought different areas of the ancient civilizations, I put a new map on the board, and I really tried to punch the colors that I felt had some qualitative reference to the place. So, and then, why in the world do I have this grid over it? Well, I'll explain that, and maybe some of you already know. So, this would show up on the board, and we can draw this. And then, when it came time for the class to transfer this drawing into their books, I said, well, here's a way to do this. So I'm not sure how much you use this, but this is a wonderful little thing that I used a lot in transferring an image, either a copied image from the copy machine or from the board. So they have their small main lesson books, and they're going to get this image on it, and I want them to be accurate. Now this is upper grades. I wouldn't do this in the lower grades. So I would put a grid on it, and I just did this very quickly as example, but I would actually measure it out and use a ruler and have everything be straight and square. So I would overlay a grid on top of my drawing. And then we would find the ratio of this grid to this size paper and shrink it down to the same ratio of a grid on their smaller paper. And then they would begin their drawing by taking the grid to their paper. So for example, here's their paper. It's this big, and they're going to have the same grid. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sections across. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 up and down. So that's going to be 8, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Everybody with me? Okay. And then it's just finding corresponding coordinates. So Where's Sri Lanka? Sri Lanka is 1, 2, 3 over, 1, 2, 3 over, and resides pretty much in this square here. So there's Sri Lanka. So they can find a relationship between every square in this grid and find its corresponding point over here. So they can do that with a Raphael portrait, they can do it with a map, they can do it with a landscape, a Van Gogh, whatever it is. They have this direct shrinkage. In most cases, it was shrinking something. Okay, everybody with that? Yeah? So if we were to continue then, the coastline here is 3 down, and of course, well, our border's part of it, so 3 down, and then again, we can look at fractions. Well, it's about 3/4 of the way down the third square. So 3/4, where's 3/4? Tell me when to stop. Okay, there we are. And is it right in the middle? Yes. So from here we cross this little square part here, so we're going to head this way, then we come down, then we move in, and head down some more, and there is our point. Okay, everybody follow? This is a wonderful tool that by 8th grade, if you've done it a few times a year, they can do anything. And that isn't to say that there aren't times when they can't use this. In other words, there's times where you really want them to look closely and say, all right, I'm drawing a piece of architecture, and I want to use my own relationship, my own spatial relationship to height and width and fraction proportions to find it all. It's not to say that that should be pushed aside for this, but this is a nice alternative to getting something accurately transferred. Okay? Okay, so let's do India real quick. Our candy. So let's use a red violet. Let's just have everybody try and mimic these colors, just as an exercise. So a red violet. And I'll go over it with another color. A similar color. Whoops. Another thing about this one's like Brett's drawing over on the wall his tree. You can see I purposely left black around edges. I wanted it to have that striking contrast, okay? So let's just pick a soft color, a middle tone green maybe. And we're going to come in and create this point. And again, the nice thing about layering is I can do the whole shape of India with this one color. And then, as time goes on, finding the Ganges, I can keep that color where I want it, and I can go over it and alter the color where I don't want it. So even though the Himalayas are eventually going to be all violets and purples and snow-capped peaks, the chalk will go over this, so I can just find it. Okay, and Sri Lanka. Okay, and then near the Ganges, I'm going to bring in a darker green. So this map is not very geographically correct. It's more of a qualitative mood that I'm going for. Leave some of your first color to come through. And give the desert regions to the north and west some warmer tans and browns. Again, just going right over your other colors. You don't have to be afraid. They'll just cover right over, and where they don't, you'll have those other lovely colors coming through. The Indus. I need to get that in over here before it's too late. Having Ganges come in and down. I also try to keep moving around. I try not to get too engrossed with one thing. So now I'm going to go out into the water. And again, I'm not going to bump right up against the contour of the land. I'm going to leave a little bit of black in between. This is 5th grade. And it's time to be a little bit more, start exercising a little bit more artistic flair. It doesn't have to be so soft anymore. The children can start to see the equivalent of brush strokes, as it were. And I want to honor deeper, darker parts of the water, so coming out a little further. Nope. With a dark blue. And the dark blue I'm going to keep away from landmass. It's going to be out further. And then right up against the land, I'm going to come in with white. And it can go upriver just a little bit. And again, I'm going to follow my original blue line. So I'm leaving a little bit of black in places, surrounding the island. Up the Indus. Okay, and then obviously a lot of this can be softened between the different blues. But there's places where I may want to keep it kind of coarse, like right where the white meets the shoreline. I may not want to soften that. And then coming back in, adding some other color. Again, this is not so much a geographical exercise, it's just doing something purely artistic. Okay, and then the mountains. Purples. So just watch for a second. Mountains and trees I tend to do very quickly with a diagonal. I'll do it with a light color just so you can see it. Here's a series of trees. If I want to do some kind of a pine forest in the background, I'm just holding this at that angle and I'm just riding it up and down to do some conifers, something in the distance. I wouldn't do it as a close-up detail. And then kind of the same thing with mountains, only I'm going to have a little bit more of a diagonal. And you can quickly get the mood of a mountain range just by doing that. So what I'll start with is the purple rising up to the north of the Ganges. And I don't have to have it be really abrupt in the lowlands. And then getting a little bit more color as it gets further up into the mountains. And all these are going to get capped with white, so I'm not really particular. I just want to get some color in there. So the white is going to be very strong. So you'll need to go over them a bit and pressing pretty hard to get a nice strong white. And put a little bit more of the red-violet blending between the yellows and greens in the valley and the purple of the mountains, just to bring in a little bit more color. And then just something fun in the border. And for this one, I just picked kind of an open spiral. And what did I do? I reversed them. So I have one going counterclockwise, and then the next one is going clockwise. And then counterclockwise and clockwise. And for all my ancient civilizations maps, I picked some image, some icon that seemed indicative of that place for the border. So they all had some kind of a decorative border. And I felt I had a very phlegmatic class, my second class, and I really felt like there were times where I needed them to feel like I wasn't just inundating them with work, because they would, if I gave them an assignment, it was, it was a, oh. So I started in, was it 7th grade? In 7th grade, I made a commitment to them that everything that I asked of them to do, I did. But then that also worked the other way, where if I was going to put a drawing on the board and I spent a lot of time at it, I would expect the same of them as well. And they took that up. They were content with knowing that I wasn't going to shirk my responsibilities, and it did good to build a level of rapport with them that, when you get into that age range, is pretty vulnerable. So we should wrap up. Are there any questions that you want to ask, or if you want to get up and walk around and look at each other's beautiful drawings of India? From over here, it looks, you have to go over there and look at yours. It looks like it's topographic.
You wouldn't believe what it looks like.
You should come over here and look at it. It looks like it's about
I should have been a cartographer.
about 1.5 inches off the surface of your paper.
Yeah, I did Italy.
Find some matching tips. I made some improvements. Cool. Those were
Any questions, comments? Was that helpful?
Oh my gosh,
It was so
amazing.
pedagogically, it's so helpful. I mean,
Good.
I could look at mine and see where I'm going wrong and where I'm maybe going right, but like a lot of things you've explained really help.
Good. It's very fun. And it's so safe, because you can just, oh, I don't like that coastline. Well, I'll just make it out a little further. And you don't even have to erase it. You just take more color and put it over the top, and pretty much anything goes away. It's very safe.
How interesting.
And they also are lovely on black and white paper.
Yeah, they are.
They're really, the colors, the texture of this black construction paper is perfect for taking the chalk. It's fabulous, yeah. Much nicer than on a chalkboard. In most cases, unless you have a really well prepared chalkboard.
Well, this is great fun.